So Comair's liquidation application is going to be heard in court tomorrow. The airline, of course, failed to raise the necessary money to continue flying. Passengers who had booked flights via Kulula or British Airways domestically have now been left high and dry. So what's the recourse for those who are owed refunds? Let's unpack this with financial consumer journalist Maya Fisher-French. Hello, Maya. So tomorrow that liquidation application is going to happen. It looks like it's going to go ahead, I would imagine, because there's just no money. Talk to me about what typically happens during a liquidation process, particularly to the company's creditors, which are, of course, in this case, many ticket holders.
Absolutely, and it's very important. This is what the note in the press release when Comair announced its application for liquidation. It said customers will become creditors, and they will become what we call concurrent creditors, not preferred creditors. So that means you kind of get in the back of the queue. Employees, for example, would first be would be paid. There would be other creditors that would stand ahead of customers. So it's kind of like what's left in the kitty is pretty much what a concurrent creditor means.
All right, so that doesn't sound very hopeful at all, but I know you've got something we need to talk about a little bit later. But first of all, the thing that's really upset so many people is that in the evening before, they announced that they were grounding flights. But during that day, they'd had their winter warmer sale, where people were getting astonishing deals on tickets. We heard last week that Comair was going to refund all those sale tickets. Do you know if that's gone ahead, or does it all fall into the concurrent creditors pool now?
The latest information that I received from Comair was that they were treating those ticket sales separately. So they said those ticket sales, and I emailed them back. I said, can I confirm that people who had bought during that winter sale will still receive their refunds? And they said yes. They said it is people who booked outside of that sale who would then fall into these sort of concurrent creditors. And I should also mention, Sally, that of course this only applies to Kulula. British Airways has this booked with confidence policy. So anybody who through Comair, because of course Comair operates British Airways locally in South Africa. So if you are flying locally on British Airways, then you also would get your refund through that booking with confidence. This was very specifically only for Kulula, and for people who booked outside of that winter sale, then they would become part of the sort of concurrent creditor batch.
Okay, so the BA ticket holders are actually safe, they're sorted. Talk to me about the options for Kulula ticket holders who didn't buy their tickets under that sale. Do they have any options open to them in terms of a refund or getting a booking on a different airline? Is that still an option?
No, that's not an option at the moment. They requested that. By the way, I'm an affected person. So they asked us to please email. I've emailed, I've sent stuff, I've had crickets, nothing. I've heard absolutely nothing at all from Kulula on this. However, there is very good news, Sally, and that is something called chargebacks. So chargebacks is this wonderful protection that anybody who used a Visa, MasterCard, or American Express card to purchase their tickets can actually apply for a refund from their bank. And this forms part of a set of rules that is actually put together by MasterCard and Visa in order to protect the credibility of the card system. You don't necessarily have to have a credit card, but it must be a Visa or MasterCard or American Express card that you actually booked with.
Maya, is there any time limit on that? Let's say you booked your ticket a year ago for a really special holiday that was due to happen next month. Have you missed any kind of deadline for clawing back the money through this chargeback system?
No, if a merchant fails to produce the service that you've paid for, that's actually what chargebacks is, then you can apply to your bank. Your bank will then effectively refund you and then lodge its claim against the bank that the banker of the airline in this case that went under. What's very important actually, Sally, is to note is that the liquidation is very important because Comair has to go into liquidation for the chargebacks to apply. So tomorrow we do, for those of us who booked via our Visa MasterCards, we actually are hoping for that liquidation court order to go through because it's only on condition of that liquidation that the chargebacks in this case would apply.
All right. Okay, that's a really important point. So in terms of the chargeback, a liquidation will actually actually serve you well if you've booked with Visa or MasterCard. Just a more general question, Maya. So the domestic airline, in fact, the global airline market, but we've seen a lot of closures. We've seen Mango and Kulula now and the BA flights as well. There's a lot of insecurity and a lack of trust, I would argue, on the part of consumers. So the next time I want to book a ticket, what can I do to ensure I won't lose my money? Because I think consumers are realizing no matter what an airline says, it's not necessarily true. So what do you do as a consumer to protect yourself when you book a flight? Is this chargeback option your best option, but then you have to wait for liquidation?
It is a tricky one. So it was quite interesting to watch this British Airways book with confidence policy play out. Because remember, of course, when Kulula was grounded, their planes were grounded in March. We had a very similar situation. Whereas if you'd booked with British Airways, you would have got your refunds, but not with Kulula. So you get, I suppose, what you pay for. Those more expensive tickets, sometimes there is an additional policy or protection policy that comes with it. So that's one consideration. But of course, if the airline itself went under completely, and in this case, obviously, British Airways is still a global brand, and they were able to make good on these Kulula flights, the Comair operated flights. But when an airline goes under, then yes, that's almost what Chargebacks is there to do. Sally, I think the question I'm going to be asking, and I'm going to be contacting some of the banks in the next week, is, does these risks of airlines going under, does this put pressure on something like the promise of the chargebacks? Because, to what extent are the banks having to fund this? And remember, it's not the bank, your bank, that's going to have to fund this chargeback. It's actually the bankers of the airline in this case. They will have been underwritten. They'll have insurances in place. But at what point does this, the concern that so many more airlines could go under, how will that affect it going forward? But right now, I would really suggest that wherever possible, use your card to make a booking. That's probably at this stage your best insurance, because even travel insurance really only focus on something happening to you, not the airline. So it in itself is not necessarily going to protect you.
Very quick point of clarity, Maya. If it goes into liquidation tomorrow and you want to go through this chargeback route, do you just phone your bank?
Correct. You contact your bank. The banks have been issuing press releases. I have been putting on my social media. Maybe we can share it on ENCA's social media. There are email addresses specifically dedicated for this. You contact your bank. You send them your details. I've done it today. I'll let you know if I get mine back. I've been assured that I'm going to get my refunds. So yes, the banks are gearing up for this because they're obviously very aware that it's happening.
All right. Thank you so much. Really important information. Financial consumer journalist Maya Fisher-French.